Welcome, cans of beans, time-traveling invaders, and messages from the future, to episode 408 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 23rd of June, 2021, and featuring K-9 the Korven, written by Tim Pye, and starring John Leeson, Philippa Coulthard, Keegan Joyce, Daniel Weber, and Robert Maloney. I am Bill Sylvia, the writer in black, and I always waste a whole day before I remember that I have acetaminophen for neck pain. With me are Randy Ronson McCulloch.
And I just take a lot of drugs.
Mad Matt Winchell.
Where's my allergy pills?
And Thomas Fireheart.
Well, this show's at least had enough restraint to wait until the third episode before doing fart jokes.
Technically, Classic Who waited till the fourth. So we're backsliding a little.
How long did RTD wait? I think it was the fourth. Okay.
Yeah. Because Aliens of London, World War III was episodes 4 and 5, respectively.
Mm.
Before that, you had Rose, End of the World, and the one with the ghosts, Unquiet Dead. And then they went back to the present.
AKA the best Gaddis episode.
Mm-hmm. And then they went back to the present for the farting aliens.
How's everybody's week?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's been a week.
Yeah, I had to do CPR training on Tuesday, which is funny because it meant that I had to work my normal 11 to 3 shift, come home, finish eating because I'd already started eating because I'm like, if I eat when I get home, I'm not going to have enough time. It just basically like finished eating, showered, and just went straight back up and had a nosebleed on the drive back. So that was great.
Oh.
And that didn't stop until I was in the shopping center and the aircon finally hit me enough that it canceled
Re-regulated
out
the pressure, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that feeling. I had the reverse problem in high school. Every time I'd go into the library, which was the only air-conditioned part of the building, my nose would just open up.
The last time I tried to renew my CPR certification, I gave up because the online training wanted you to do the chest compression rhythm, but they wanted you to do it with your one finger clicking on a mouse. And that's a completely different set of muscles and a completely different way of timing to learn. And it just didn't seem like the hours it would take to get the consistent 80 clicks per minute rhythm that they were looking for without going too fast or too slow. And it wasn't going to save anyone's life. You're not saving anyone's life with your index finger.
Yeah. I mean, like they teach us that for like a baby that you should only be using 2 fingers, but
this was adult. This was adult CPR.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have to like show we could do it properly on the like the baby sized doll, but yeah. And it's funny because like when we finally actually got to that, and it's funny because they had us there for like the period of time we were being paid for was 4 hours. But we were done in like 2.5 maybe. Because it's like it was only CPR, so it didn't take that long. It was mainly just padding for time.
Well, also he probably has to be sure about the amount of people that are going to be there. You know, if there's more people, it's going to take them longer.
Well, yeah, we ended up starting a half hour late because they thought it was a great idea to try to get us to start at 5 when a lot of the people in the group that I was in finish at 5:30.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
So we had to wait around a half hour for them to show up. And then and like one of the guys that was there just didn't even want to really be there because he started at 6 the next morning. So it's just like, thankfully, we were only there until like a bit after 7:30. So yeah, like only like a bit over 2 hours, maybe. But like apparently, like the previous night, he just tried to pad because he'd been told he had to meet like a certain time because we were getting paid to be there because it was a mandatory
Got
thing
you.
for work.
So he was like he couldn't be done and over with in 30 minutes for XYZ reasons.
Yeah. And it was like, apparently even like our boss at that point was just like, when it got close to like 3 hours of being there, was just like, yeah, actually we can just wrap this. Can we just wrap this up? Because even she was realizing, oh, okay, yeah, this was a bad idea to try and get him to pad it out as much as possible.
Let me
Like,
guess, that decision came down from management.
yeah.
To even do
And
a thing,
again,
probably.
yeah, as like I basically, when he was saying that he'd been told that he had to fit an arbitrary amount of time, I was like, they're paying us to be here, so they want us to actually be here the whole time.
And I mean, and that's part of pay structures is probably like, okay, the manager is probably like, well, my team is able to get paid for up to 3 hours, but I have no way in the system to get them paid for 3 hours unless they're physically on the clock for 3 hours. Therefore, everyone has to sit around for 3 hours, even if it's a 1 hour training or or whatever the amount of time would be.
Well, either that or it's simple management thinking, well, we're paying them for 3 hours, they're going to be there for 3 hours. Which
that was the
which
thing.
is
We were actually
pointy hair thinking.
Yeah, we were getting paid for 4 hours actually. So it was a matter of, it got to 3 and she was like, okay, yeah, no, that's this very clearly, this was a bad idea to try and make you pad this out. So like our group, which was the second group, just, yeah, we basically were done at 7:30, and we just sort of sat around and talked for 15 minutes and then he let us leave. Which was funny because my parents were already like driving around town at that point anyway, so I was like, oh sweet, good timing. You can just come and get me now.
I'm still trying to figure out who wrote the corporate policy that says lobotomies are mandatory for management, because it seems like the people that you know that are below management level, they're smart as hell. Then you put them in management and they go dumb almost immediately.
It's more like if you have a computer that has a lot of RAM, so you download a ton of unnecessary programs and force it to run them all at the same time. And all of a sudden it doesn't have enough RAM anymore. That's pretty much what happens with paperwork and other bureaucratic nonsense. Take it from a former management member.
So when did you get the portion of your brain back?
When I stopped working 50, 60-hour weeks, and I stopped being responsible for 20 other people's problems.
And was this just like food service level management, or was this?
Yeah, this
like
was basically middle management, being restaurant management.
Yeah, I was thinking more corporate management.
Mm-hmm.
This is reminding me of work already. I'm not even there yet.
Yep. But yeah, considering that's something I'm sure most of us could rant about for 2 hours. On a semi-related note, because it's something, they're both things the Red Cross does, and that's a mediocre segue. I gave blood for the first time since the pandemic started, so now I know where the Red Cross in Athens is.
Rewinding also on a similar note on the rewind. Yeah, I got told yesterday that we don't know when the truck's coming in. The big truck that brings like 2/3 of the store in.
You know.
And then they finally texted me today saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to need you in like 8:00 in the morning to set up for 9:00."
Do you remember when truckers worked to keep their schedule come hell or high water, back in like the 80s and
Well,
70s,
honestly, they were
when
still doing pretty good when I had a job in 2009, but there seems to be some issues.
I mean, it's also entirely possible that they lost half of their drivers between the pandemic and pandemic-related issues.
There's that.
Mm.
There's the fact that some of them just don't want to come back, or there's also the fact that I'm not sure if any of it's gotten cleaned, how much of it's gotten cleaned up yet. But we had a series of incidents on our southern border too, which is where some of these trucks
Yeah,
are coming
I know
from.
you mentioned
Yeah.
that affecting the roadway last week, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how much it's affecting it this week, but it's still a possibility,
True.
as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that's the benefit of the types of deliveries we had in the restaurant was pretty much as long as they came between midnight and 9 a.m. It didn't matter what time they came because they had a key. They just dropped everything off, and I put it away in the morning. But you can't. That's not the same with a full convenience store or whatnot.
Yeah, especially a full convenience store that has a very, very, or more like a general store, but still a store either way with a very small back room for storage.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I actually got some good news this week.
Mm.
So as you may or may not know, I am no longer exclusive to this podcast.
Yeah.
I do another podcast on Fridays called the Cyberpunk Generation Podcast.
I like the way you phrase that makes it sound like an open relationship.
Yes, I'm poly podcastist now. But yes, I do the Cyberpunk Generation Podcast where we talk about cyberpunk stuff. And I do a game of cyberpunk following that podcast with some of the people on the panel. Anyway, in prep for this week's game, I was looking for some information which I couldn't find. It was normally on a website that was no longer there. One of my players directed me to this other website, which did have what I was looking for. And I was browsing around because it looked like a massive archive of old Cyberpunk 2020 stuff from the 90s. And within this archive, I found the Madison 2020 stuff that Bob and I built way back in 1996.
Shit.
Now, this stuff had been posted on GeoCities, which then went down. And around the same time, both Bob and myself suffered external hard drive failures, which wiped our copies. So we thought all of this stuff was lost to the ages. So, I pretty much spit take and I message Bob. He spit takes. And then I
worse,
fire.
it could have been saved on 3.5-inch floppies.
Well, they probably were originally.
Actually, I think you're close, Bob, or I think I'm close, Bill. I think mine was saved on zip disk, which then
I
clicked.
lost a lot of shit when zip disks stopped being a thing.
No, I lost a lot of shit when my zip disk stopped working. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I messaged this guy, and yeah. Apparently, since we were credited under old pseudonyms, he's going to change it to our actual, and we're going to have control of it again. So that was like finding a long lost child.
Someone on the internet somewhere out there saved it and kept it for prosperity.
Right.
No, this guy deep dived the Waveback archive.
Nice.
And he's done that for like a zillion sites. So it's like, oh my God, it's all here. All of it. Hell, I can remake some shit I didn't have before.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like an amazing find.
It was just, wow. And I'm looking at some of the stuff. It's like, okay, some of this is still good, but wow, what was I thinking with some of it?
That's
good,
growth.
Good garbage. Tink.
All right.
For whatever reason, the last week or so for me, I've suddenly got into watching VR streamers / YouTubers. In particular, I watch a guy who runs around basically doing jokes. This has led me to find out about a guy whose avatar is basically Ugandan Knuckles, but his main shtick is that he does music parodies. So yeah, there's been some amusing stuff out of that.
Anyway, on tonight's show, we have birthdays, we have a death, we have a little bit of news, and then there's a little bit of geek talk, and then we're going to go into our episode summary, our review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. So, birthdays. We only have 2. They're both on June 17th, and they're actually a couple of big ones. First one's the birthday of Jodie Whittaker. You know, the Doctor, currently.
Yep.
She turned 39. On the same day is the birthday of Arthur Darvill, who played Rory Williams from 2010 to 2012. He turned 39. Yes, they're the same age.
Holy smokes!
That must have been a hell of a party on the Broadchurch set.
Oh yeah, he was on Broadchurch
For a little bit, yeah.
I mean, not quite as good as when Anthony Ainley, Sylvester McCoy, and Sophie Aldred shared the same birthday, but then again, they're all different years. These two are the same exact day.
Yeah. That's got to be kind of freaky. Yeah. Yeah, we were born on the same day at the same time, just on opposite sides of the country. Yeah.
That's peculiar.
Anyway, so happy birthday to Jodie and Arthur. And from there, we go to Lost Stories. AUP is saddened to announce not only the death of a Doctor Who actress, but a companion. Jackie Lane, who played Dodo Chaplet in the 1960s, has passed away. Jackie Lane was born in Manchester in 1941. After receiving theatrical training, she was a bit player in soap operas such as Coronation Street and Compact. She initially signed up to play the role of Susan in Doctor Who when it was first announced back in 1963, but withdrew when she learned it required a 1-year commitment. 3 years later, when Doctor Who was going strong, she was cast as Dodo, a role she would only have for only 4 months before new producer Innes Lloyd refused to renew her contract. Jackie left acting following Doctor Who, eventually becoming a talent agent. She would represent Tom Baker during his tenure in the role as the Doctor, as well as Janet Fielding while she was playing Tegan. Ironically, Janet Fielding would then go on to be a talent agent for Paul McGann.
And tried to tell him no when Paul went, watch me.
Yep, and then Jackie Lane died today of unreported causes. That doesn't mean anything suspicious. It just means that they've chosen not to tell us.
Yeah,
right.
Some sort of natural causes,
And
most likely.
at the age of 79, that's
getting close. Yeah,
not as late as it could be, but probably not shocking either. But yeah, we were looking over some of the past records before the podcast, and I think this is the second companion that's passed since we've started doing the podcast.
And considering we've been doing that for almost 10 years, that's not a bad track record.
Now, if we had started the podcast a year and a half earlier, this would be number 6.
Well,
yeah, that's because that was that year from hell that took away Elizabeth Sladen, Nick Courtney,
Kate O'Mara, and
Mary Tam.
Mary Tam, yep. Oh wait, Kate O'Mara was more recent. Carolyn John is who I meant to say.
Carolyn John, yeah.
Yeah,
all those died within like a year and a half of each other, and then we've had this wonderful coast during which we've been broadcasting.
Yeah. So given what the past 15 months have been, definitely grateful it hasn't been more.
Right.
All right, so that takes us to Big Finish news. There's only one new release this week, and that is the War Doctor Begins, Volume 1, Forged in Fire, with the voice of Jonathan Carley as, I guess, the young War Doctor.
That's right. He is supposedly has started a much younger Doctor than
I
what
guess
we see in the specials.
Okay, so he's playing young John Hurt.
Yep.
Yes, essentially. All right, so that is all the news we have. Moving down to Geek Talk, they want to talk about the recently concluded Critical Role Campaign 2.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, like it's funny because with Critical Role, it took me forever to get through the first campaign because I burnt myself out by trying to watch too much. This time around, I did it in a smarter way where I just tried to watch, depending on the day, at least 2 episodes a day to start with. And then getting closer to the end, it was harder to, like, wrestling had grabbed my attention again, so it was very hard to focus on more than one episode of Critical Role at once. So I just went to 1 a day because it's like, well, that's still moving at a faster pace than the show was. And yeah, I managed to finish like somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks after the show officially aired the final episode, which was interesting. Given that I only started this year.
Meanwhile, I'll throw in a few bucks here on this too, since I have watched it all. I was actually actively watching the entire series as it happened.
Ah.
That includes me tapping my foot for about half a month while the whole COVID thing happened and they couldn't stream for a while.
Right, yeah, they were
Actually,
off
it was
for, like,
longer than half a month. I think it was actually
yeah,
a full month, maybe a month and a half.
I feel like it was longer. I feel like they ultimately took like a decent chunk of 2020 off.
They took a little bit, like a little bit before they figured out that they could do a remote setup kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do recall it being around about a month. It wasn't like 2 or 3 months, but I know for sure it was around a month.
Which
before
would be
they
how
figured
I.
things out.
Which is the funny thing is that's probably why I caught up as quickly as it did.
Yeah, that
Because
just
they took
speed
so much
ran
time
you
off.
because they had such a long pause.
Yeah. Yeah, like it is interesting watching this having seen campaign 1 because campaign 1 was a continuation of a game they'd started at home. So the first episode just throws you in with no real explanation as to who the fuck these people are.
Just vague hints as to
Well,
what
yeah.
they do between themselves. Yeah.
It was them
Yeah.
doing this, and eventually somebody says, we should stream this.
Yeah.
And
The original game
then
was
they took.
the original game, as I
then-
recall, was started because of they wanted to do it for somebody's birthday.
Mhm.
Yeah, Liam O'Brien's, if I
Yep.
remember correctly. It
And then,
started
like,
as a one shot and then evolved.
Yep, and then they said somebody should stream this, and then they thought about it, and they discussed it, and they said, okay, well then we should probably go from Pathfinder to 5th edition. So they converted, and then they got the equipment to set up streaming, and they went for it. And that was history.
Yeah.
But yeah, by that point they were like,
Wait, they
level
converted
8.
mid-campaign?
Yes.
Like a couple of
Yeah,
sessions
yeah.
in, yes.
They when they started streaming, they switched over to 5th edition because they realized it would be a lot less awkward to stream.
It was easier for them to stream, and also I believe because somebody in the group might have had an in with Wizards of the Coast, possibly as well.
It was literally because combat would be faster. And they could get it. Otherwise, combat at the level they were at would take multiple gaming nights, and people wouldn't tune in for hours of endless combat. So they just decided, okay, let's convert to 5th edition. That'll make it go faster.
Yeah, hours of endless combat does sound like 3rd edition. So
yeah, I know. And I actually think they did have a thing early on also where some of them would be like, "Oh wait, shit, that's Pathfinder," and they'd have
Yeah.
to be
Occasionally,
like,
yes. I think
yeah.
they still suffered it once in a while, even in this campaign.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Percy's whole class was a
Yeah, yeah.
Pathfinder class that they
Mm.
converted to
Ah.
5th edition.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um.
they had several things that they had to basically just ad hoc.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny because even watching like their sideshow Talks Machina, they kind of get it pretty easy where this campaign and the previous are very different in tone, and that this is a lot it's a lot darker, and there's also the characters in it are a lot more. I think the way they usually describe it is the characters are a lot less traditional fantasy heroic type people. Like this group at the start, it's set up that there's this war going on in the background, and basically all their characters are like, yeah, nah.
Yeah.
No thanks. We don't want anything to do with that. Whereas they've said like before, like, well, if this was our previous group from campaign 1, they would be all into that shit. But these characters now are like, nah, fuck that. Like if we get dragged into it, we get dragged into it, but we're not going to intentionally go out of our way to. Um and like it's funny because I guess the comparison you could make is that Vox Machina are the Avengers, and the Mighty Nine, which is a group from Campaign 2, are Guardians of the Galaxy. By
Kind of a way to
comparison.
look at it, yeah.
Yeah. And that they're just like a group of like outcasts that come together and are just doing this because
And
it's the
definitely
right
at the
thing to
beginning,
do.
most of them were looking out for number one themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the
Yeah.
same players.
It's the same players,
Yeah.
very different characters.
Oh yeah.
For instance, one of the what was it, gnomes? Yeah, one of the gnomes from the previous game is now it started off as a goblin.
Mm-hmm.
The other
Yeah,
gnomes started off as a Azamar.
Yeah.
Um,
Barbarian as well.
Yeah, and a barbarian. The I forget what they're called. The giant people.
Goliaths.
The Goliath is a orc this time.
Hmm.
The two half elves became a human and a tiefling.
Hmm.
The human became, trying to think, which one was he again? Oh, he first started off as a tiefling, and that character is still around, but also then later on became a Furbolg?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're called. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, and the one full elf from the first campaign became a human as well.
It is. That's actually another difference. Is the team in campaign 1 was very like lacking in magic users. This one is primarily like, or at least there's a
Trying to
lot
think.
more.
Yeah, I don't
Magic
think there's
users
not
this
one of them
time
that doesn't know
around.
at least a little bit of magic.
Yeah, like pretty much
Except for the one
only.
barbarian in the group, and even then she has a little bit of magic due to her race.
Well, yeah, like she like the only one that's really got
Actually,
like
if anything,
basically
because of her
none is the
gear, she's
monk.
almost anti-magic.
Mm. Yeah, it's pretty much the monk that has like basically no traditional magic at all.
But then she has
In
crazy
this
monk
one.
shit, so you might as well almost be
Yeah.
a spellcaster.
Yeah.
You don't have magic, you have key.
Keep spinning that key. Whap, 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 whap.
Yeah.
Just
Which
turn
is
to
also the
Kenshiro.
fun which is also the fun thing about being able to watch these characters from the get-go, because you have a lot of stuff in later stuff where they're just like, holy shit, you did like, 60 damage in one hit or something. But then you go back to like the start and they're like, yay, I did like 2 damage.
I managed to
Like,
do
4
10 damage in
or
one
something.
round. Oh god, I'm gonna get
Yeah.
killed.
Yeah.
Run away.
Like early on, they would just chant whatever level they were at as like mocking the fact that they're so low.
Oh, that and every time anyone rolled a 9.
Which is end up why
9.
they.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's also interesting because ultimately this campaign, without really giving anything away, basically ended on a more like personal stakes note than campaign 1 did, which was more like, oh fuck, the world's gonna end note, whereas this was like
This was a threat. This still had a world-ending threat to it, but there's definitely a lot more stakes to it personally for the characters.
Yeah. It's like the sort of leading into the end of it is more a personal stakes ending than a the world, the sort of the cataclysm-y sort
The
of thingy.
cataclysm is still there, but it's
Boom.
kind of shared in with their desire to do something else about another side story for the main characters there that got them tied in the first place.
Yeah, like ultimately to me, I am glad that I watched the whole thing. It was definitely an interesting ride. There are some, like, it's funny because the characters that I latched onto the quickest, what ultimately did end up being my favorites. Overall, mainly the wizard, Caleb, and
Caleb always needs a hug. Poor Caleb.
And not like those two were like the characters that I latched onto the quickest and the ones that I basically had the most investment in the whole thing. And it'll be interesting to see what the hell happens in the next campaign, because a lot of the choices they made for the characters they made this time were like, ooh, that class seems interesting from the previous campaign. So like, I'm pretty sure Liam O'Brien went with the wizard because the wizard that they had, or sorcerer that they had in the previous campaign, left the show.
Let's
So they
not
were like,
talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, we're not.
So
We
it's
weren't going to talk about that. We're just saying that's the thing that happened.
Yeah. So it's like, shit, we like really need a wizard this time. So just went a wizard. And a lot of them were just like, ooh, that seems cool. Like, the woman who ended up playing a tiefling, it was mainly just because a guest that came on at one point played a tiefling and was like, ooh, that's cool.
So suddenly she was very interested and thought that she might stand, and all of a sudden one of the other guys was also picking tiefling. Like, oh.
Yeah, it's like it's as much as a time sink as it is, which is one of those things of like, as much as I enjoyed it, I'm also kind of like, thank God. But then it hit me like the day after, like, oh fuck.
There's
This
still more
basically
stuff to listen to.
Yeah, it's like it became such a part of my routine the past couple of months that now I'm like, well shit, now what?
Well, now you apparently need to wait a couple of months until their in between side thing is done, and then they come back with the new batch, because apparently they've already been promising the season 3 now. Yeah, it was their State of Critical Role the week after they were done that they basically stated, we're making plans for the third game. Don't worry about it. It'll be a few months, but we'll get there.
Yeah. And I think essentially what I'm going to be doing is like finally catching up on the sideshow talks marking out, and then like once I'm done with that, I'm just going to go through all the one shots, because I've been putting off bothering with them until I finish the main campaigns, as like that were already out.
The one shots for me can be either really hit or really miss as to how much I'm interested, but there are definitely some really good ones.
Like, if anything, I almost thought I was going to watch them and just the order they aired, but I'm probably going to go by like, well, these ones actually are like follow-on one-shots from campaign 1, so I'll watch them first, and then I'll watch like
see what
whichever
all comes up for one
ones.
shots for campaign 2.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah,
if there's going to be a couple of them.
Yeah, but I'd definitely say that if for people who haven't checked out Critical Role at all, that it's worth checking out. If you like would rather watch something from the start, then I would say start with campaign 2 and just like if you can crank out at least an episode a day, you will be finished within a year. So and even like half an episode a day if that's all you can manage, or like whatever. Otherwise, I would honestly start with campaign 1 or just never do campaign 1, because if you get campaign 1 out of the way first, you get all the shitty audio and all the shitty video out of the way because their tech just gets like the equipment they have just keeps getting
You
better.
bypass the growing
So,
pains.
yeah. So it's either bypass the growing pains entirely and just wait for the show that they're doing, the animated show, which is basically an animated recreation of campaign 1.
Including the stuff that we didn't get to see, if I recall.
I think so,
the few things they didn't get to record, yeah.
Yeah. And like depending on when, you could also just if it's too much of a time sink for you, just kind of like wait until they've finished doing the critical recap stuff again for campaign 2. But otherwise, I'd say it's with either or that, or just kind of watch like the best bits, kind of compilations or something.
Yeah, there are those out there. I keep forgetting they are out there. I haven't seen them in a while.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely think it's worth checking out.
I was definitely amused by most of what went down in campaign 2. There are definitely some slow bits, but usually that's the point in the stream where you're like, okay, time for a sandwich, and come back.
You're always worried you're going to miss that one great moment.
I actually haven't. Usually when I go for a snack, it doesn't take me too terribly long, like maybe 5 minutes at most, and I'm back again with a drink, and I'm just ready to sit down and listen again. And usually I don't miss too much. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was. Oh yeah, it was the Wizards fight that comes later on in the second series.
Anyway, you guys got 2 minutes.
I just take my phone with me when I make a sandwich, so it doesn't interrupt anything.
But yeah, generally I liked this a lot. I liked most of the characters. Poor Caleb needs a hug as he hides in the back. I think actually my runner-up after Caleb would actually be the Tiefling Jester. She was also very amusing. I'm trying to remember her player's name right now, and it's escaping me.
Laura Bailey.
Laura Bailey does a great job with Jester. That was Laura Bailey on like 100% sugar.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, that's campaign 2 for them.
All right. So moving on along, I'll let you guys talk a bit longer since there was the one thing.
Yeah.
That brings us to the summary for our episode.
Yeesh.
And whose job is it to do the summary today?
It is mine.
I was gonna say, it wasn't posted yet.
So let's hope I can read my notes that I scribbled in my notebook while watching the episode.
Are you ready, Bill?
I am ready.
All right, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
The episode starts with Starkey and K-9 avoiding the police, kind of like they were around the end of the previous episode. Georgie eventually shows up and brings them some food. Darius then calls Georgie and says the professor has gone missing. Unbeknownst to Darius, he has been kidnapped by a green alien who came out of the professor's time machine. Once the trio arrive, a man from the future contacts them through the time machine. Don't ask how. The alien is called a Korven, and Korven agents have been coming back in time to cool the Earth to prepare for a future invasion. They trace the Korven by traces of its coolant system. This coolant system is also affecting K-9's processes, causing him to go into a sort of hypothermic shock right around the time they find the professor. K-9 somehow overrides this shutdown in order to shoot the Korven. He then runs out of power, overrides that, and shoots him harder, slowly cooking him to death, calling back to a scene earlier that I didn't mention where he cooked some beans. They get back to the lab, and the professor deletes Starkey from the police databases and offers him a room. The end.
All right, so that was a minute and stopping it now. I believe it was a minute 27.
Okay, that's going to be one of our records for shortest summary.
That's what happens when you get 20-minute one-offs.
All right. So let's talk about what we liked about this episode. Matt, you are first again. My dice roller keeps rolling twos. Fuck you, too.
I'm number 2. That means I'm the poo. I'm trying to think. General thing I liked overall. I will say it's a little bit odd at points, but I generally like the costuming on this one. The Korven's a decently made creature, although I still have like head tilts once in a while. Like it seems to strike me as familiar to something, but I'm not sure what.
I don't know. It's like a Grask in a jumpsuit. But I've been trying to figure out what it looks like.
Yeah, like I said,
I mean,
it's
it
actually
doesn't
something
look
familiar.
like a Grask, but it just kind of hit me as that's like the amount of quality that went into it. It's like it's like a bat-eared kobold in a jumpsuit. It's really weird.
That kind of is almost along the lines too, I suppose. But yeah, it was an interesting creature. I didn't mind it. I don't think I have some other problems with it that I think is what my brain's trying to come back to, but that's not what I want to focus on. But on set for the makeup effects they did with it, I thought was pretty decent, and also on set some of the stuff they did with other characters involving the creature were pretty cool too, like having the professor float behind him at one point.
All right, Thomas.
Oh dear.
Long pause. Long pause. Crickets.
It's
Chirp,
one
chirp.
of those things where like
Chirp,
the episode is so short that it's like, God, what is there?
Chirp, chirp.
God, I guess like short of like one example, a lot of the humor they were getting out of K-9, I feel was probably stronger in this than the previous 2 episodes.
Agreed.
All right.
Yeah, I'm still generally enjoying the slow improvement K-9.
How about you? What did you like about the episode?
Well, it was very tightly written. Pretty much most of the jokes I can think of ended up being Chekhov's guns that had a payoff that affected the plot down the line, which can be tricky to do, especially without it being overly forced and contrived. And I think they did a very good job with that. By which I mean there was the baked bean thing. It was a joke. It paid off later. There was the Darius trying to get Georgie to come live with them, which was basically a joke scene, which ended up paying off later and being plot relevant. There might have been another example in there. So I thought it was very tightly written in that way.
All right. I agree with you on that, by the way. And I have to applaud the character dynamics actually progressing properly rather than getting reset. So I thought that was pretty good. All right, let's talk about what we don't like about this episode. And Matt, you're first.
So I enjoyed the physical effects. One thing I did not like, which I noticed, I don't know if this is a flaw or what the deal was, but it seemed like there's multiple times where the creature was supposed to be doing something, but the visual effects guys weren't putting in anything.
Hmm.
Like the creature at one point literally has his hand over the professor's head like he's doing something, but then the professor's just wiggling there, but nothing happens.
Like it was supposed to have like the ray effect, and
Yeah.
it just wasn't there.
Yeah, and they did it again a few minutes later with somebody else. It's just like, oh, for crying out loud, come
Now that you
on.
say that, I remember watching it. I was like, oh, okay, he's about to start the ray effect, and then
Again.
he doesn't.
And then it
but
doesn't,
then he
yeah.
also doesn't react to Darius like walking over and talking to him. So I'm like, okay, what's going on?
Well, no, he later, a little bit later in that scene, Darius gets in a confrontation with the thing, and he again
And
lifts
then he
his hand like
moves,
he's doing
yeah.
something, and then nothing's still happening. Even
Oh,
though Darius is
right.
sitting there like has something is. So it's like, did the budget for laser beams run out this episode?
Well,
What the hell happened?
We could afford 4 laser beams, and 3 of them went to K-9.
That's it. We're done today. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thomas.
This will likely be a recurring issue that we have, and I know it came up in at least one of the first 2 episodes, but just the CG K-9.
Okay, that was going to be mine.
Stuff.
Yeah, the green screen CG K-9 was very dodgy in this episode.
Yeah, like
I swear to God, it was missing some keyframes.
Yeah, like in some shots, it's like, okay, it's far enough away from the camera, whatever. But there's one close-up shot where I'm like, every other scene in this show thus far, when K-9's been that close,
It's always been the model that's hanging there at the height, yeah.
So, like, why in this particular instance did you decide, oh yeah, fuck it, we'll just keep the CGI one going and not just change the camera angle so we can quickly swap in the model?
I think somebody on set did oops,
especially
or
because
their alternate takes didn't work well. Something went on there.
Especially because it's always one of those instances like this the CGI Slitheen, where the CGI Slitheen move around a lot differently to the practical suits.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
God,
like
yes.
this K-9, it is moved differently, like a lot more freely when it's CG compared to when it's compared to when it's the model. So it's like there's a bit of inconsistency.
By the way, the director for this, who would have been in charge of some of this, hadn't worked with the series before, but will work with it again.
Uh-oh.
This was the first one directed by Carl Zwicky.
Okay.
And we'll see him again in episode 6, episode 10, episodes 12 and 13. And then I think that's all he did. So he was the director for the first half.
I wonder if those are all the Korven, like, of the Korven episodes or not.
No, because there's some Korven near the end.
Gotcha.
No, it looks like he had just signed on to do that, and they might have just canned him after the first half. Maybe because he has some dodgy special effects directing.
Maybe.
Who knows? Okay, Bill, your least favorite thing.
Speaking of special effects, I almost chalked this up to being a sort of compression issue of some sort until when I was looking up images online, I saw it juxtaposed with the Disney XD sign and definitely saw that what I saw was valid. And that is that the Korven itself, it has it's 2000 era textures from it looks like a late PS1, early PS2 era textures, where it's like the 3D-ness isn't quite there, and it's just very obviously a cheap CG effect that to the point
I
of
actually, Bill, I'm going to
taking me out
stop
of it.
you. I'm pretty sure it's a
Okay.
costume the entire time. I think it's just a question of the film quality.
Well, then it's a filter or something that's really fucking weird because it
It
looks like a
is.
PS2. It looks like an early PS2, late PS1 effect. And I'm seeing screenshots from other episodes that have Korven in them that don't look like that. So it's something about the way they did the Korven in this particular episode.
Honestly, it might be a lighting
Yeah.
issue because this guy's apparently new. So
If it is a costume, it definitely does not look that way from any of the screenshots I'm looking at right now.
Can you post some of those so we can see?
yeah, double check
Sure.
this because I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I'm pretty sure
I-
that's a guy in a costume
I-
the entire time. I don't know why they would go
Yeah,
digital.
like I know in the first scene the Corvin shows up in, even I was kind of like, okay, is this supposed to be like a mix of a practical thing with a bit of CGI over it? Because it looks a bit wonky.
Right.
Again, also it could have been lighting or an angle, but also it was a part of a visual effect too with him teleporting
Yeah.
in. So it's like, okay.
I thought those looked, especially the bottom one looks like a practical to me, Bill.
Yeah, the layer one, the bottom one, I'm well aware that, yeah, that's the one that was part of a digital effect. I think the reason why the bottom one looks weird is because it was part of a digital effect, but I'm pretty sure it's still a guy in a costume.
It might be they might have had some sort of compression that they did that wasn't necessary, like that wouldn't have affected the rest of the TV. Because even like I'm trying to find one of the ones that had like the Disney XD logo. That is much higher resolution than the actual effect seems to be, or the actual visual seems to be. Whereas, oh, I see.
See,
It's
I
the
have
same
one of
scene I
the
sent you, but not the same
XD on it
image.
too, and it looks like absolute garbage. So
So
your
this
mileage may
one I'm
vary on
sending
the images you
here,
find, to be honest,
like,
because not very many people
mhm.
seem to be well aware of it. Yeah, that's the one. That one looks like
Yeah, and
absolute
see,
garbage, but I
like,
say
but
that's the picture itself.
if you compare the face to the Disney XD logo, it looks like a big difference in resolution to me.
Well, probably the XD was actually airing in HD, and this is old enough that they were doing probably standard definition.
Yeah. Yeah, this is also this is if it's on XT, which I believe was always digital, wasn't it? It was always like an
Yeah.
online service.
Could have been because it was 2000. Yeah, this was 2009, so it would have been after the digital conversion.
Yeah, their
analog wouldn't
high
have been a
end would
thing
have been like
anymore.
720.
Yeah, but remember, this aired, I think, 2010.
Oh, I said digital conversion as if it was the United States. This was Britain and Australia. I have
That
no
too, you
idea
also
what
have to
the
remember.
broadcast was
And-
like. Yeah.
But what I was saying is, remember, this was airing in 2010. That was the first year Doctor Who went HD, and that was the BBC. This was not the BBC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're going to have a lot of loss of detail in there, not only from multiple transitions to other people, but also the fact that they're not going to be streaming this high end.
That wasn't the Disney XD wasn't a streaming service, Matt. It was a cable service. So
Right.
yeah.
Still, the picture quality is going to highly vary.
Yeah.
All right. So that was Bill's.
Yes.
But yeah, it does look weird at some points. I'll agree to that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Thomas stole mine with the dodgy K-9 CGI.
Yeah, I think the K-9 episodes are one where we benefit from being a small panel because in 20 minutes it's hard to 16 things is a lot to find.
And while this should have been mentioned in previous episodes, I'm just going to take it here to mention it. The sheer stupidity being a partially functional space-time portal sitting unguarded.
I was thinking that too. Yeah.
In your entryway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because this seems to be an ongoing issue.
Yep.
I mean, if this was fucking Stargate, it would be freaking under a mountain with freaking security guards.
First there was the turtles whose name I keep forgetting half of. Then there were the rats, and now there's this.
Yeah,
Can we
and
have like a guardrail, an on-off switch, something?
An alarm.
That too. At least if nothing else, be alerted when something comes in. I think we might have paused here. Yep. Be just a moment.
Something
Yeah.
the professor is
Security.
not
All right.
particularly worried about.
Yeah, but you would have thought he would have bought a clue by now. Anyway, favorite scene.
Just in time. All right. Favorite scene. Oh gosh, a favorite scene from this episode. I guess I'll go with the beans. That was an amusing moment. Yes, I can get them precisely to temperature in just a few seconds. That's not a bad idea. Boom. Yes, K-9, they're perfectly temperatured, and they're spread everywhere. I'm sorry, everyone. Discord is having a moment.
Right.
Okay.
You back, Matt?
Yep. Sorry, Discord's having one of those moments right now.
Okay, Thomas.
Probably the scene where K-9's kind of going to shit, and God, there's two bits in that I could probably go with, so I'm trying to decide which one. I guess I'll go with the bit where like Darius and Georgie are coming in and they see K-9 just sort of laying there, and he's just like, well, I told him it was dangerous, but does anyone listen to me? No.
Yeah, they did get some comedy out of that bit.
But does anybody listen to me? No. And I'm warning you all right now. I'm slowly shutting down.
That was the same scene where he's like, Zap.
Zap's a funny word, yep.
Know overall how I feel about the awkward open-ended love polygon, which I'm sure some mathematician in the comments will tell me why it's not a polygon and what I should actually call it. Please do, actually, because I don't know what actually to call it. I got a C in geometry. But
it's a good thing you're not a Rumiko Takahashi fan, Bill. Yeah, love there is like a rhombicasa dodecahedron.
I like how you say that as focus, and this doesn't. It's all open-ended. But anyway, the blushing scene I still thought was funny and was pulled off pretty well.
God damn it, Bill. I had one scene I liked in this.
Checking senses.
And you fucking stole it. Ass. Oh.
Which brings us to you.
Yeah, except now I have fuck all. Because there goes Matt again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sick and tired of waiting for this thing to stop unclogging stuff, so I just left a call really quick. Oh, that's not good.
Is it better now?
All of a sudden, you lit up like Christmas trees, so I don't know. Discord's just being really weird right now.
Okay, let's see if we can just finish this up.
Yeah, just keep going. While I can still hear you.
Least favorites.
Oh, least favorite. So that would be to me. Least favorite scene. Trying to think. Least favorite scene. Actually, what's his name? The guy that's living with the professor already.
Darius.
Darius. Yeah, I remember it started with D. The nonchalantness of Darius at first is just like, dude, are you kidding me? He was literally talking to you a moment ago, and the professor doesn't seem the kind of guy to be quietly sneaking
Yeah.
around.
Mhm.
And not to mention, the professor doesn't seem like the kind of guy to just randomly leave his stuff on the floor. The minute I would see that on the floor, I'd be like absolutely panicking, running around.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's like he's got his head turned and he's messing with the fire, but it's like, dude, that thing was making noise. It never said anything, but it was making growling noises. Like, come on.
All right. Thomas?
This one was kind of easy. Because it was like, oh god, we're going that way, are we, with the show? And that was the fart joke with K-9 right at the end of the episode. Because it was just like,
Well, actually, they had a couple farts throughout the episode.
well, yeah, but like this was like the specific.
That one was
I
very
think this was
blatant,
the only
yes.
one with K-9, yeah, and it was just like, uh,
Not again. Huh?
I hate your Discord. The call just it's literally just the call that keeps freezing up. I can actually, like I said, the call and come back.
All right. Bill?
So mine, I'm going to go with the fact that K9, first he shoots a weak laser and then completely shuts down due to lack of power. And then, like 10 seconds later, all of a sudden, he's fully alert and has the ability to slowly cook the alien to death like a giant can of beans. Like, that needs considerably more power than you had a minute ago.
I think
Where
they
did
were.
this?
I think they were trying to excuse it that he was doing something to himself to allow for more power really quick. But even then, it's like,
It sounded like his power recharger was having an intermittent failure due to the gas, is what
Which-
they explained in the next scene.
And and that's part of it. Like in this, this was more than just that scene in the sense that he had already gone through a similar thing where he was like, "Oh, I'm shutting down." Or issues dictate the plot, and yeah, I just did not like the way they handled that sequence at all.
It's one of those things where I'm wondering if that's going to be a recurring theme to try and make it so K-9 isn't like vastly overpowered.
just keeps shutting down for various reasons. Yeah.
Or he just runs out of power every episode.
Would you have had that issue if K-9 had instructed one of them to use percussive maintenance?
If they had maybe like plugged him into an outlet or something, or even if they were like had heated him up in some way so that he wasn't like, I mean, I know he was blaming the gas, but in function it seemed more like the cold was affecting him. So if they had done something substantial that would either warm him up or decrease the amount of gas affecting his circuits, or given him an outside source of power, any of those three really, I would have been perfectly fine with.
No, I said
Discord, you're beginning to piss me off. Sorry, folks. Discord just locked up again. And this time it's actually Discord that's going into non-response mode right now. So we'll be right back with you in a moment, but Discord is being super touchy all of a sudden. I don't know what Discord's doing. But at least I managed to leave the call, so hopefully they know and understand something's going on. Come on. There we go. Yikes. Discord.
What happened that time?
I told it to leave the call to restart it again, and actually went into not responding mode for a few moments. So anyway, why were you saying he needed to be percussive maintenance?
Well, Time Lord Tech seems to respond well to percussive maintenance. I could have seen them hit him, and he would have just been like, emergency power backup.
Yeah, my
located,"
response
you
to
know.
that was that at times the TARDIS console has been held together with strings and paper clips, whereas a newly regenerated K-9 should not have that problem.
He rebuilt the TARDIS console in the Five Doctors. It still required percussive maintenance. And now, everybody else vanish?
I'm good. I actually just found out what might be part of the issue is that the thing I was running in the background to keep things clear is actually paused itself, so I'm refreshing it real quick. Anyways,
So now it's
who were
Matt.
we on?
I mean, now it's Randy.
Okay.
Okay. My least favorite scene. Oh. Honestly, I don't think I have one. At least none that we haven't covered. I mean, the kidnapping of the professor was kind of a lame moment to me because it was too freaking obvious. Oh. Just because it seemed to be extraneous, the Georgie and her mother scene. Just because that could have easily been sacrificed.
I'm guessing that was there mainly like in case you missed it in the last 5 minutes of last episode, these two are related.
Yeah.
Basically, and that was kind of unnecessary.
Although I'm guessing, especially with that and then the phone call scene later of Georgie not picking up, I'm guessing it's building towards some conflict in a future episode.
Yeah, between her mother and the dick. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's kind of obvious.
Well, not even just between those two, but between her mother and the people she's keeping company with, period.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, final thoughts before we lose Matt again.
Final thoughts, I'll go really quickly. There's some touch and go with this, although I will say the best part of this is definitely that the writing seems to be slowly improving, and hopefully that does continue to be a thing. K-9 is still the best character, which is actually good for being an aptly titled show about K-9. I just
He
hope
is the
that
protagonist.
Yeah. I just hope that it just continues to improve, and I hope that whoever's in control of the visual effects got a slap on the wrist and told, no, fix this next time.
All right. Thomas?
Yeah, this is one where, despite certain issues, you can definitely see that there is some improvement. I give absolutely no fucks about this love triangle bullshit that they're trying to get across, because
it does feel like it's unnecessary, and you know where this is obviously going.
Yeah, and especially this was supposed to be aimed at like 11 to 15-year-olds. It's like, what the fuck are they gonna care? But whatever.
It was probably put to relate so that it was more relatable for people that age, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
And again, it's also just kind of weird that like you've got an actress who was actually a teenager and two 20-year-olds.
Yeah, I think that's more your hang up than anything else.
Well, yeah,
You know,
again, like for me,
it's
it's
like
just like
Bill's reaction to Name of the Doctor once he realized they were naked.
Oh, when the,
Yeah, naked all the time, even with hologram clothing.
I don't know. In that one, the episode explicitly stated they were naked, not
It,
somebody
it,
going
it
up on
didn't. I will agree
IMDb.
that it didn't help that the show constantly had to
Yeah.
remind you of that.
Right.
Roll the
Yeah,
Yes,
eyes
but what I mean is it didn't really bother most of the rest of us, but
until they
bothered
kept
the
bringing it
crap
up.
out of you.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like otherwise it was nice to at least like my worry was after like 2 episodes where they didn't feel like a full story and then we realized, oh whoops, they're 2-parters anyway. That it was like, okay, so this is supposed to be standalone. Will it still somehow end up suffering the same issue? And thankfully it didn't really, but it also felt like nothing really happened in a way. It's like this just feels like setup for later, for when the Korven come back, rather than like, oh no, it's this big issue necessarily. But yeah. Like not in the sense that it feels like part 1 of a 2-parter again, but it's still just like
Prologue.
Right.
yeah. It really is one of those things where like, God, did Sarah Jane have the right idea of just doing still half-hour long episodes, but like everything's a 2-part.
Purposely so, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, like it'll be interesting to see, given that this was like a slight improvement from previous, if this will like just continue to get better or if it's just kind of a fluke and it gets worse.
All right, Bill.
Okay. So the last 2 episodes were definitely a series pilot, and it had all of the flaws that come with that. This one kind of feels more like a season premiere, in the sense that it's obviously still in that sort of pilot territory. They just, they just gave Starkey his new home, and I'm sure the next episode is going to be Starkey and Darius as roommates that hate each other. And of course, they set up a new villain, although we don't really know in this episode that it's going to be a long-term villain. But we kind of do, because they said it's an invasion that they're sending back agents for. So it does a lot of that sort of work. But at the same time, it really relied on having those other 2 episodes before it, so it couldn't have been episode 1. That said, I do think it was a little stronger than episodes 1 and 2. Maybe it was because it was a little more self-contained. The characters, I think, are a little more bearable. That said, a romance plot is not substitute for character development, and it is not character development in and of itself. Whereas right now, the only character development any of them are getting is their romantic feelings or lack thereof for one another. So something needs to give if we're going to continue giving a shit about these characters.
Well, actually, one of the few things we have gotten is that a couple of these kids have obvious parent issues.
Actually, all of them do.
Well, the one that doesn't, only one of them lives with a parent. And she even was like, oh no, I don't really have a conflict with my mother.
Even though it's obvious she kind of does on some level.
Yeah. So hopefully that actually gets development rather than just being background noise.
Just sits in the background, just being
Right.
a dead weight, yeah.
The professor seems like a character who's not going to develop other than like eventually maybe achieving his goal. We don't know. Where was I going with this? But otherwise, yeah, K-9 is starting over as a fresh model and potentially developing. And I feel like I'm stuck in a rut and lost the ability to move forward with my thoughts. But it's an all right episode. Again, better than the previous 2. Not wonderful, blew me out of the water, but it's improving, and I don't mind seeing where it goes next.
All right. So my thoughts is this is still an early episode. It's obvious that the show has yet to find any real feet. And it may never find feet, or it could suddenly hit the floor running. But for that said, this episode was pretty tightly written, and it managed to work well within its half-hour format. The character direction was okay, but the special effects, particularly the CGI, was a bit dodgy in many areas, and that seems to be, though, the one main place it needs to work on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's rate it. Matt, you're first.
I believe
Last week you gave it a 3.5.
Yeah, I was gonna say last week I believe it was a 3.5, and it was barely a 3.5. This one's like, oh, I almost want to say it's a good and give it a 4, but I'm still borderline gonna say it's a 3.5 right now. So it's
Okay.
not moved much, but it has moved up a little.
Okay. Thomas?
I would almost rate this higher than last week, but the fart joke's just like, no. Sorry. Gotta drag this back
damn it.
down.
Okay.
So it's a
So
3.
3 again from
Still
Thomas.
3.
Yeah.
Thomas is going to be a hard seller.
So I definitely feel like it's better than last week, and I've been debating whether it should be a 4.0 or a 3.5. As a Doctor Who episode, it would not merit a 4.0. And since even the person who went high last week said 3.5, I think I'm going to agree with him and say 3.5.
All right. And I'm going to agree with the majority of people here. I think this was better than last week. I think this was 3.5 material.
Which means Thomas is wrong.
Which means Thomas is wrong, and we average to a 3.4. Which will put us...
At least it's on an upward trend, and hopefully they'll continue it. Let's see.
Yeah.
3.4 will put us at number 293 out of 391 things reviewed.
It almost leaped about 50, didn't it?
Yeah, about that. It's, I'm not that surprised because, new show, low production quality, yada yada.
Yeah, it's got to work through its issues first, and then it'll hopefully hit the floor, like you said before, running, and it'll get where it needs to go.
Yep, and this will put it a good 3 points above its predecessor, Regeneration Liberation. So, yeah. I'm not going to count it among the others because trying to count it among the Doctor Who is, not going to work.
Especially when there's so many other 3.4s.
Yes. 293 out of 391 things reviewed. That's all we have to say about K-9, the Korven.
All right, so please let us know in the comments. What do you think? Don't forget to like the video. And, of course, subscribe and ring the bell to get our exports on YouTube, which I've been aiming to get through consistent at the same time every week now. So that should be better. As well as following us on Twitch to get our streams every Wednesday night.
All right, so next week we will review our final K-9 for this season. We will be doing one more, and it is K-9 the Bounty Hunter, written by Ian McFadyen. I think that's how I say that. And starring John Leeson, Philippa Coulthard, Keegan Joyce, Daniel Weber, and Robert Maloney.
I hope the Bounty Hunter is Boba Fett.
Oh, it wouldn't be, because then they'd get sued.
Copyright.
Because remember, Disney didn't own it at the time. See you next week.
It is in fact not actually Boba Fett due to international copyright laws, but it is a good facsimile. Good night.